Hello everyone, Zivex here, back with another tutorial. In this tutorial we'll be doing 3D items. So, without further ado, let's get into it. So the first thing that you want to do is you want to head over to Blockbench. Now if you don't have Blockbench installed, you can install it from blockbench.net and click on the download button. However, since I already have it installed, we can just head over to Blockbench. Now, once you have Blockbench opened up, what you can do is you need to click on Bedrock Entity and then click on Create New Model. Now, when you're creating a new model, we need to define the file name. So, since I'll be making a staff, I'll just call this staff. And then the model identifier, which is the item identifier in game, we'll just call this staff as well. So, once you have filled those two in, you can click on confirm. However, one thing I'd like to mention is default UV mode. Now, if you're making your item so that it has different dimensions, or dimensions that Minecraft doesn't normally take in, you need to use a per face UV for weird dimensions. However, if you're going to stick to the Minecraft dimensions, then you can click on box UV. So since we're sticking to the Minecraft dimensions, we'll just keep it to box UV. So after you've done this, you can click on confirm, and you are ready to start modeling. Now, to set up our modeling, we need to first create a main bone. And what this bone will allow us to do is it will allow us to bind to the player's hand and also apply rotations to it. So, to do that, what you need to do is on the right hand side, click on Add Group. Then once you have added the group, you can see that we have a folder called Bone. Now, I'm going to just rename this to Main. It doesn't matter what you call this, but since I'd like to keep things sort of organized and defined, I'll just name this as Main. Now, once you have created your bone, what you then need to do is you need to right click on your bone that you just created, then click on Edit Binding. Then once this screen pops up, what you need to do is you need to click on the 3 lines. And these 3 lines will pop up with a couple of options. However, since we want this to be a 3D item and we want it to be rendered in the item slot, or just the item, when we select the item, we need to click on Main Hand. So, this will automatically fill in the query item for us, so we don't need to do anything else, we can then just click on Confirm. So, you are now ready to start modeling. So, to actually add models, what we need to do is we need to add cubes, and these will allow us to view a cube, and this will be displayed, well, whatever we model here will be displayed in game. Now, if you wanted to have multiple bones, or multiple cubes that have different functionalities or different rotation points, when you animate the actual item, you need to add a new bone that needs to be a child of the main bone. And then what you can do is you can just position this bone wherever you want. Then any cubes that you put under the actual bone will rotate with the bone. So for example, as you can see, my bone is here, but my cube is over here. Now, if I were to rotate this bone, you can see the cube moves with the bone. So basically, this is like an anchor point to all models that are a child of this bone. So just to keep that in mind, if you want to go in a bit more advanced modeling, then just keep that in mind if you want to sort of have advanced animations or modeling. So now that's out of the way, we can actually start modeling. So I will just be spin this part up and I'll meet you on the other side. So once you are done with modeling, what we need to do is we need to texture the actual model. So to do this, all we have to do is click on the Paint tab on the top right. Then on the middle left, the second button from the middle left, you can see that there is a Create Texture button with a plus icon, like an image. So click on Create Texture, then the name is the texture file, the name of your texture file. So we'll just be naming this staff underscore texture. Then we'll keep this as texture template, since this is since Blockbench will automatically create a UV map for us. Then any other settings, you can play around with these. You can hover over these question marks to see what each setting does. However, I'm just going to keep this all the same, so I won't be changing any of these. And I'll just be clicking on confirm. So once you have done with setting your settings, you can just click on confirm, and we are ready to start texturing. So again, I'll just be speeding this part up, and I'll see you on the other side. So once you are done texturing your item or your model, what you need to do is you need to save both the model and the texture together. So to do this, what we have to do is on the top left, we can just click on the file, and then we can say save model. We'll click on save model. So to save the model, what it will do is it will save the texture for us first. So it will pop up with your texture file. And as you can see, since we actually know this, we can see it's a PNG texture. So that's an image file. So we'll just be saving this in my texture folder. It doesn't matter where you save this. We just want to save it somewhere. So we'll just save this. The next is the save model format. Now, since we are exporting to Bedrock, we want to click on Bedrock Model. Now, once you click on Bedrock Model, it'll pop up with the Save As, and we'll just be saving this in the Geometries folder. Or you can save this wherever you want. So, I'll just be saving it in the Geometries folder. So, once you click on Save, it should be saved. Now, next, we need to import into Bridge. So let's head on over to Bridge and import it there. So once you have Bridge open, the first thing that we need to do is we need to create a new item. So to do this, if you haven't watched the items tutorial, I suggest you watch that to get an in-depth understanding of the items and how they actually work. However, since we are doing a 3D item, and we won't be adding any behaviors to the actual item, we can just create a new item. A blank item will do for us. Then we just need to fill in the identifier. So since I'm creating a staff, I'll just call this identifier staff. And then the display name, so sign staff. And then we just click on create. And the item should be available for us in game, since Bridge auto-generated a lot of the things that we need already for us. So we can just close out of this, and we are pretty much done with the item. Now, next thing that we need to do is we need to import the geometry and the 3D item texture. So, to do this, in the bridge hierarchy, or where your folders and files are, right click, go to more, and then reveal in File Explorer. Now, the reason why I'm doing it this way is because when we try and import a file through the bridge import file, there is a bug that will just straight up delete your geometry file, and we don't want that. So I suggest that you do this workaround method that I'm going to do, which is to open the actual add-on in the File Explorer. Now, once you have the File Explorer or your add-on open, what you then need to do is you need to click on RP folder. You need to go inside it. Then next, we need to import the model of our item. So, to do this, since we don't have the required folder for the model to be in, what we need to do is we need to create a new folder and call this models. Next, inside the models folder, what you need to do is create another folder and call this entity. It's important to name these properly. Now, if you were to save your model somewhere else or somewhere outside, Minecraft won't recognize it as a model. So if you were to save it outside of this entity folder as well, Minecraft still won't recognize it as a model because of how Minecraft Bedrock Edition works. So we need to actually import the geometry file of our item inside the models and entity folder, which is the folders that we just created. So once you have created these folders, or since if you already have these folders created, you don't have to do anything. You just need to navigate inside the models entity folder. So once you are done, what you need to do is you need to navigate to your geometry that you just saved from Blockbench, so your item geometry. Copy your geometry and paste it into the models entity folder. Once you have copied and pasted, next thing that we need to do is we need to import the texture file. And to do this, go back to your RP, navigate inside the textures folder, then you can create any folder that you want. We'll just name this 3D. And then inside that 3D folder, we'll be doing the same thing, which is to copy our texture and paste it inside the 3D folder. Now, it doesn't actually matter where you save the texture folder, since Minecraft doesn't need your texture to be in a specific place. However, I do recommend that you keep it inside the textures folder because of how Minecraft organizes things. And this is just the default way to do it. So we'll just be saving this inside the textures folder in 3D. You don't specifically have to save it inside the 3D folder. You can just save it inside the textures folder. It doesn't matter where you save it, since in the Attachables file, which we'll be using later to link up the item and the 3D model, we'll just be defining the path to that texture. So that is all we need to do. So once you have copied and pasted your texture, we can head over back to Bridge and then create a new Attachables file. And with this Attachables file, we're just going to name this staff, and that is all we really need to do. It doesn't matter what name you put the file name as, since the attachable just works on its own, a bit similar to how Animation Controller works if you're familiar with them. However, since that's a different topic, we'll just be creating the star attachable folder. So once you have named your attachable file, we can click on Create, and we can start setting up the actual attachable. Now, if you haven't watched the Attachables tutorial video yet, I suggest also watching that, so you get a more in-depth tutorial on how to use this. But since we'll be using this for 3D items, I won't be going too in-depth into the actual attachable. So first thing that we need to define is the format version, which for us by default Bridge leaves it empty. So we'll just be putting the latest version, which is 1.20.0. So after you have filled in the format version, then next we need to set the identifier. Now, this is an important thing to remember. Since we want this attachable to be linked up to an item, we need to put this identifier the same as our item identifier. So, since we've already created our item, as you can see here, the identifier is sign.star or sign:*star. Now, all we have to do is we just need to copy this identifier and paste it into the identifier field of our attachable. Now, this will actually link up the attachable to the item. So Minecraft knows what item this attachable is linked to. This is very important to know, since if you don't have these as the same identifier, then it won't link at all, and your item will just be rendered as a 2D texture item and not the 3D model that we are going to define later. So once you have done this, in the Attachables file, we need to set a material. Now, a material defines how Minecraft renders the textures of your 3D model. But for now, since the actual Bedrock samples file, which is the actual Trident attachable, since Tridents actually use the same method that we are going to use here, Mojang actually, well, the Trident uses the entity _alpha test material. This is pretty important to know, since if you have any other material, it doesn't sort of seem to work. I mean, you could test some other stuff, like you could have multi-texture, you could probably have an emissive texture, but for now, we'll just be using the alpha test, since this just is basically the regular or the default 3D items material. Next is we need to define the enchanted material. And to do this, just add a comma, then add a apostrophes, two apostrophes, then call this enchanted. And outside of that, colon. And then we need to say entity underscore alpha test underscore glint. And this will basically make it so the item has the glint texture when it is enchanted. Next, we need to define the textures. Now, if you remember, we imported the 3D item texture in the textures, 3D, and staff underscore texture.png. So we need to see that the path, so we can see that the path is textures 3D staff underscore textures.png. So all we need to do is just need to fill in the default field textures slash 3D. Well, if we can find it, 3D staff underscore texture. It seems like Bridge isn't picking it up. So if this happens for you, what you need to do is you just need to refresh the project. And after that, it should work. And as you can see, it actually popped up for us. So keep in mind, when you change any files or folders inside the actual file explorer of the add-on, you need to actually refresh the project. I did gloss over this and I didn't do this, which is why it didn't come up. So that's pretty much all we need to do to fix that. So we just need to import the path to our 3D item texture, and that is all we need to do for the default. Next is we need to define the enchanted texture. Now the enchanted texture is already done for us by Mojang. So all we need to do is we just need to add a comma, add the enchanted key. Then all we have to do is just type in the following, which Bridge doesn't give the auto completions for, and it might error for you, well, for us, but it is correct inside Minecraft. So all we have to do is just put in textures slash misc slash enchanted underscore item underscore glint. And that is all we need to do. So if you want your enchanted item to have this glint, then we can just use the default glint that Mojang has already provided for us, even though Bridge doesn't accept it. But this is correct. So that's pretty much all we need to do. Next is we need to define the geometry. Now, for the default value, we need to define the geometry identifier. Now, if you remember in the blockbench, we saved our 3D item or 3D model. We saved the identifier as staff. Now, if you've forgotten what your identifier is, all you need to do is just navigate to your model file, and then inside the model file, what you can see is under the description, you can see identifier geometry.staff, and that is your identifier for this model. So we just need to put in that same identifier, if I can spell correctly. So geometry.staff, As you can see, it popped up for us. And that is all we need to do for the geometry, materials, and textures. You do not need to really change any of these unless you have future plans for these. But for now, you're pretty much done with the materials, textures, and geometry. That's all you need to do. Next is we need to set up the render controller. Now, the render controller tells Minecraft how to render the item. So, it pretty much tells Minecraft whether it's a 3D item and whether it should be rendered when holding, or whether it's an attachable, like last time in the Attachables tutorial. So, since we are doing a 3D item, all we have to do is we have to put in controller dot render dot item underscore default. And that is all we need to do. The last thing that we need to do is just get rid of the pre-animation so Minecraft doesn't error. And if you have done everything correctly, it should render in game. So let's load up Minecraft and see how it looks in game. So now that we're in Minecraft, we just create a new world and then set whatever settings that you want. We'll just be doing flat world, yada 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 yada. Then we can just enable cheats, simplicity, always day, turn all these off. And then what you want to do is you want to add the resource pack of your add-on and the behavior pack. Now since these packs are actually linked, Minecraft automatically added these both for us. So that's all we need to do. Then in the experiments, we need to enable the holiday creator features. Now if you do not have this on, well, if you do not have this option in Minecraft and you're watching this in the future, you probably do not need to actually do anything. You do not need to enable any experiments. However, for those in the current day that do have this option, you do have to turn on holiday creator features. This is required in order for your 3D item to actually work. So, once you have turned this on, we can just click on create. And if we have done everything correctly, we should see that there are no errors except for these UI errors because Mojang broke something inside the actual JSON UI. So we can just ignore all of that. So once we're in, we can just open our inventory, scroll all the way down, and we can see that our item is there. So we can just grab our item, and again, if we have done everything correctly, our 3D item actually appears. Now, if you don't see your item at all, and you don't see anything, then your item might be actually hiding beneath. So you just need to fly up, and then you can see your item, if your model is underground. Or, if your item is the 2D texture, please go back through this video and see what you've done wrong. If you've done one part of this wrong, then most likely that you have defined an incorrect value. So just double check against yours and mine together and see what you've done wrong. Then after that, it should work for you. So now that we have this 3D item actually rendered, we can see that it's not actually positioned correctly. Now, to position it correctly, we make the use of animations. And the animations allow us to define what animations we need to use for first and third person views. So if, for example, if we're in third person, we can use a different animation as opposed to first person, which, as you can see, the item is actually positioned differently than in third person. So let's head on over to Blockbench and create the animations. So once we have Blockbench loaded up, what you need to do is you need to go to your Animate tab on the top right. Then what we need to do is we need to create a new animation. And to do this, on the left hand side, you can see a big sort of plus icon. And then when you hover over it, it should say add animation. So click on the plus icon, and then we'll set the name of our animation file. Since we are doing the third person first, what we need to do is we need to change the new to third underscore person underscore wield. And this will basically allow us to, and this is basically the name of the animation or the identifier of the animation that we want to use for the third person. Now, one important thing to note: if you want multiple animations, say for example, you wanted a throwing animation, you would need to create four animations in order to cover the first and third person animations. But since we are only defining when we are holding the item, we only need to create two. So, as you can see, I've named this third underscore person underscore wield. You can name this whatever you want. Just make sure to keep your animation dot whatever it is the same, because Minecraft defines animations as animations dot the item identifier. So be sure to keep that the same. Then after that, you can put anything you want, even numbers, maybe some special characters. It doesn't really matter. Next is the file. Now, with the file, if you have an animation file already created and linked to your attachable, you can just select that file and then just add the animation. Since you can have multiple animations in a single file, but since we don't actually have a file to use, we'll just leave this blank so Blockbench will actually create a new file for us. Next is the loop mode. Now, in loop mode, we need to set this to loop. Now, the reason why we need to set this to loop is because when a player actually unrenders and re-renders your player model, it will actually reset all animations. So, in order for everything to be rendered properly, we need to set this to loop. So, as soon as the player re-renders your item, it'll look correct. Next are some other settings that you can play around with or set whatever you want. However, I won't be actually changing any of these, so I'll just be leaving this all default or blank. However, you can change whatever you need, but for my use case, I won't be changing any of this. So once you are done, click on confirm, and we are ready to start animating. Now, to animate our model, what you need to do is on the right hand side, you need to select your bone or your group, and then we can actually start animating. Now, since we want the item to be facing away from our player, so in the direction of our player, so this head bit over towards our player, we can just look at the N on the grid map, and this will actually tell us what direction the player is actually facing. So since we want this bob head or the top part of our item to be facing in the direction of our player, we just need to rotate this towards the direction that we need it to face. So to rotate it, all you need to do is just select the rotate. So on the top left, as you can see, there is move, resize, and rotate. or you can just press R to switch to rotate. Then all we need to do is just rotate this 90 degrees. Now, as soon as we start rotating, you can see underneath here, Blockbench created a keyframe for us. And this keyframe defines the information at this timeline, which is 0 for us. And as you can see here, Blockbench shows us the information of that keyframe. So we've actually rotated this 90 degrees positive on the x-axis. And we can actually change this, so we can say negative, and this will do the opposite way for us. But since we want it to be facing with the player, we'll just be putting positive 90 degrees. Next is, we need to actually place this in the player's hand. Now, to actually place it in the player's hand, we need to move the model up by about 22 pixels, or 22.5 pixels. So to do that, select your move tool, so you have these 3 axes, then move it up on the y-axis by about 22. Now, as soon as you move up, you can see Blockbench creates another keyframe for us. However, one important thing to note is that each keyframe that you can see here, since I have 2 keyframes here, these have different values. So, as you can see, the one highlighted in blue is the one that we have selected. And since the one that we have selected is the position, because we changed the position just then, it's actually highlighted for us. If we wanted to change the values of the rotation keyframe, all we need to do is just click on the rotation keyframe, and as you can see, Blockbench automatically selects the tool for us, and it displays the information for us over on the left hand side. But since we want the position, we just need to select the position and it will pop up for us. If you don't have any of these selected, then nothing will come up, and yeah, you would need to then create a keyframe in order for Blockbench to show information. So now that we've positioned it, we can sort of position it in decimal places. So we don't specifically have to do 22. We can actually do 22.5. And Minecraft will allow that, since Minecraft works in certain floats, and we can actually do that. So 22.5 is roughly where the player hand is. So roughly where the player hand position is. And that is pretty much all we need to do. Now, since we want this to be placed in the actual player hand, we just need to move this back in the z-axis by about 2 or 3. Doesn't really matter. So we'll just place this back around 2. And once you are done with animating, all we need to do is we need to save the animation file. Now, all we have to do is we just have to click the save icon. Either one of these two, doesn't really matter. Just click on the save icon. And then we can just save this anywhere we want. So I'll just be saving this in my animations folder. So I'll just click on save, and it should be saved. Now, all we have to do is we just need to import this into Bridge. So let's head on over to Bridge and import it there. So, just like before, to import the animation file, all we have to do is we just have to do the More Reveal in File Explorer, then navigate inside the RP folder. Now, to actually import our animation, what we need to do is we need to create a new folder and call it Animations, if you do not have the Animations folder already created. So once you've created the Animations folder, inside the Animations folder, we need to import the actual animation that we exported. So to do this, just go navigate to your animation. Let's see if I can find it. So there is block bench animations. Then all I have to do is just copy and paste this into the animations folder. Now, once you are done, we can just go back to Bridge and then refresh project. And then we can see here that Bridge has the animations for us. So now we need to actually link up the animation of the item to the actual animation. Now, to do this, all I have to do is just inside your Attachables file, what you need to do is you need to add a new key and then call this animations. So as you can see here, we just need to add the animations. Then Bridge will automatically generate the object for us. Then inside the animations key, we need to define a name that we are going to use inside the scripts. So this can be really anything that you want. So we could say test and Minecraft will accept it. It's just whatever you want this named as. But for our use case, since we are doing like a third person animation, we can just say third_person_wield, and that will be all good for us. So after that, what you need to do is just add a colon. Then we need to define our animation identifier. So if you do not know your animation identifier, all you have to do is just inside your animation file, what you can do is you can see the actual name of your animation. Now you can see here, animation.staff.third_person_wield is the one that we want to use, since we actually exported it from Blockbench. So all we have to do is just type in animations dot staff dot third_person_wield, and that's pretty much just referencing this animation here. So once you are done with that, the next thing that we need to do is we need to tell Minecraft when we want to play this animation. And to do this, inside the scripts key and the object, what we need to do is we need to define the animate here. Then the animate will create an array for us. Then inside that array or list, we need to define an object, so the curly braces. Then inside that object, we need to define the animation that we want to use. And as you can see, we have defined the animation here, and it's popping us up for us in the actual Bridge autocomplete. So we can just click on that. Then the next thing that we need to do is add the string or the apostrophes. And then what we need to do is we need to tell Minecraft when we are in third person. So to do this, all we need to do is just type in !C dot is underscore first underscore person. And that just basically is referencing the camera, which is what C is for. And then it's accessing, is it in first person? If it's in first person, then it'll return true. However, we've actually inverted the actual value. So with this exclamation mark. So if C.is_first person is false, then this will return true because of this exclamation mark. If we were to remove this exclamation mark, then it would return true. But since we want this animation to play in third person, we need to define that they are not in first. That we want this to play when they are not in first person. So after that, just save your file and we should be ready to go. So let's head on over to Minecraft and see if it worked. And as you can see, the animation worked since I am in third person and the animation is being rendered correctly in my hand. Now, if I were to switch to first person, as you can see, it is not correct in rotation. So to fix this, we can do the same thing as what we did when we did third person animations. So this is a bit of a trial and error, and I will be speeding things up a bit. However, you will see how I sort of work when we make our first person animations. So let's head on over to Blockbench and create the first person animations. Now once you're in Blockbench, what you have to do is just click on the plus sign on the top left. Since we've already created the actual animation file for us, we can just add a new animation to that file by just clicking the plus sign, and then we can just name this animation.staff.first_person_wheeled. Set the same settings and click on confirm. And once we're done with that, we can just do the same thing, which is to rotate this on the x-axis. And that should mostly be correct. However, this is a trial and error. So I will be doing some of the trial and error through the actual Minecraft. However, if you've done your first person animations and you've already done your first person animation, what you need to do is you need to re-import this into Bridge. And to do this, all you have to do is just save your animation. Since if we edit this, you can see that there is a save icon here. So we just save this and we'll see that we need to re-import this animation file. So to do that, all we have to do is just copy and paste the same animation file that we just saved, place file in destination. Then what we need to do is we need to add the first person animation. So again, in the Attachables file, all we have to do is just define our first_person_wheeled animation. Then since I haven't actually updated this, I believe I haven't updated. Yep. All I have to do is just refresh the project. And as you can see, there's my first person animation there. So we can just do animation.staff.first_person_wheeled. And then, just like before, we can just do a new object, first person wheeled, and then we can do c.is_first_person. And the animation should play for us when we're in game. Now as you can see, I've actually forgotten a comma here, and that should actually work. So let's test this in game and see if it worked. And as you can see, it kind of worked. I mean, it is way up there, but it is better than what we sort of started with. So all we have to do is we just have to do a bit more tweaking. So we'll just do that. And then we'll just re-import the animation. Oops, that's not what I wanted to do. Here we are. And then we can just refresh project. And then we can just reload Minecraft, see if that worked. It's rotated a bit towards outwards. If we were to look at the trident, it should mostly sort of be the same, kind of. Maybe. I'm not entirely sure what's going on. So, I'll just be speeding this part up a bit, and since this is a trial and error, and I'll see you once I've finished. Now, one thing important to know is in Blockbench, we can actually see whether we're in third person or first person. Now, as you can see here, we can see that if we select third person, we can see that the item actually renders correctly. However, if we're in third person, then it'll render differently. But since we're in first person, we can actually use the first person. But yeah, that's pretty much all we need to do. So, again, I'm just going to mute myself and I'll see you on the other side. And as you can see, our item is actually rendering properly in our third person and first person animation. So that's pretty much it for this tutorial. I will be going a bit more in depth in an animation tutorial. Say for example, you wanted the item to animate while holding it. I will be showing how to do that in the next tutorial. But for now, that's pretty much all there is to 3D items. So I'll be seeing you in the next tutorial, which will be the Script API basics. Then I will be doing the animation tutorial. So, without further ado, it is a goodbye from me, and I will see you in the next tutorial. Bye!